Hello and welcome to the WIHS Journal Public Affairs from 104.9 FM. I'm Paul Kretschmer. My guest today is Manette Morgan, who describes herself as a survivor of abuse as a child.
Multiple types of abuse. As a child, I had an emotionally abusive father who was also an alcoholic who grew up in his own emotionally abusive home. By the time I was 8, I was being sexually abused by a cousin, a relative, for almost 5 years. From there, I went on and married a narcissistic man that was emotionally abusive and was with him 10 years. And then after that, I got out of the abuse train, or off, and got all the help I need. I went to therapy, self-help, and it was just a topic I was just drawn to. And I never repeated what I did and what I learned as a child, as an adult, and once I left the abusive relationship I was in with my husband. So I just had a little different take on it. I just immersed myself until I figured it out. And then when I was overseas with my husband living, my 2 children were in college, I had a lot of friends and family encourage me to find a way to help others because I had figured something out and I had an amazing life, healthy relationships. Neither one of my children have been in abusive relationships or experienced abuse. Mm-hmm. I broke the cycle in my own life. So that's how I got there. And then I went back to school and became a certified life coach from the American Solution Focus Training. It's an international program. And also a certification in NLP here in the States. And since then, I started teaching workshops. And from there, I wrote a book. So that's kind of how it evolved and happened for me personally. I just was passionate. I really want to help others break the cycle of abuse in their own lives and with their own families. And I just have a lot of information. I've been told my little book, as I call it, is about 3 or 4 books in one. So wow. There's a lot of information there. Yeah, I just took everything I learned, and I just really wanted to help others find their own way of healing and discover that they can have these amazing lives absent of abuse and free of abuse.
Is it an unfortunate fact that when abuse occurs in one generation, it's likely to replicate repeatedly because that is the pattern of life or the baseline, perhaps, shall we say, for people who grow up in that, and then that is their point of reference? So then, even though other people may look at them and say, how can you live through this? And how can you do this now? It's in some place in their head or heart, perhaps they understand that it's not normal or not preferred, but it is what they know, and so therefore they do it. Yes,
it is. It can be very generational. It can be also societal in certain communities. I think that you're exactly right. A lot of people, in my opinion, people grow up, and if they've grown up in an abusive situation, either with a parent or a relative or somebody, or they will either repeat the cycle of abuse in their own lives or become a victim. And sometimes they don't even have to experience abuse. They can just witness it through their early years, and they learn and they assume, without someone teaching them different or being exposed to something different, that this is a norm. This is the normal way families interact or people treat each other. And it's very sad. And that's not always the norm. That's not really the way it works. It's just what they're exposed to and what they've learned.
It occurs to me that a young child, for instance, may not be touched themselves, perhaps, but by observing it, as you mentioned a moment ago, they may become what we sometimes refer to as being imprinted early in life. So then that's the print they take around with them.
Yes, it is. You're exactly right. It's the witnessing part of it. I grew up in a household that, my dad was an alcoholic. He was very emotionally abusive. He had full of rage my entire life. He today isn't. He's actually a very calm older gentleman now and regrets what he did. But he learned from his own mother, who was mentally unstable, actually. The best we can figure out that she was bipolar and manic, and she was just all over the place, and his dad was an alcoholic to cope with her.
Oh, my goodness.
So, he didn't have any great people to lead him, mentors, to show him that this is not normal. And he never got help for it or addressed it or even knew that there was anything to address until practically I was grown, I would say. And my mom, she was the perfect codependent. She grew up with kind of a passive-aggressive mom, and she was good at being a codependent, so she just played her role in the part of the family. So we all kind of play our roles, and unfortunately, they're not always good roles or healthy roles for any of us.
Okay, you summoned a point that I feel the need to ask you at this moment, which is people like this, people who come from challenging backgrounds like this, do they tend to look and find each other because of the things they've lived through or the things that they've learned to live their daily life with?
There seems to be a commonality in that. You're very right. I will give you an example. I was drawn to a man in high school that I ended up marrying later that was learned to be manipulative and controlling and narcissistic from his own mother. And he was idolized within the family. And so he was immediately attracted to me because I would give in. I would accept those behaviors from him. And I did. I served myself up on a silver platter for him, believe me. And you're right. That's exactly what happens. My second husband, who was an amazing, loving, and caring man, we were drawn to each other, and I didn't know it till much later. I'm pretty sure his sister went through something. So he was the type that was very compassionate towards someone that had been through struggles and abuse. And I don't have that verified or know for sure. My husband today, his mother has struggled with challenging things and mental, emotional things, and she was abused. So, yes, we are drawn to people that either get us. I just wrote an article about tolerance and anger and everything going on in the world, and it was interesting. I was trying to explain that we like people like us. We like people that understand us, get our stuff.
Yeah.
That's just the way it is. I don't know another way to put it. You just hope that if you've been in a bad situation, you learn from it, you grow. Hopefully you find someone else that's learned and grown, and you can come together and healthily go forward,
Is it possible for someone to grow up in a household where there's a certain amount of turmoil going on, enter some sort of a treatment program for themselves, and seemingly be normal, relatively normal, let's say, as what's normal after all, but then find themselves acting out down the road when they first begin to try to establish a family and a household, and things that have been in the closet, let's say, or in a box, so to speak, someplace, suddenly come closer to the surface and start controlling or influencing how they act?
Yes, I totally think so. I think that you can go doing the work, I always say, isn't always just cut and dry. I mean, I did work right, when I left my first husband and went to therapy and all this stuff and immersed myself in the self-help world, group incest therapy. I did it all. And I learned a lot. In about 3 to 4 years, I learned a lot and thought I had it figured out, to be honest with you. And then something else arose. A different kind of relationship arose. And I realized, whoa, wait a minute. I know this, and I've learned all of this, but I need to do some work here. And I think that's what you're referring to, is you can do the work to maybe go to treatment centers and get your stuff together, I guess. And then something else happens, like having children. And all of a sudden, some of those maybe not so healthy behaviors pop up again. And we have to address them, and we have to recognize them. The good thing is if you've gone through some kind of treatment, you're usually more aware. It's all about awareness. And I think that if you go through stuff you're kind of more aware of, and you kind of see red flags, and you kind of are like, whoa, wait a minute, maybe this isn't so great. Maybe I need to do something different here.
Yeah. It occurs to me that a person may make as much progress as they're able to at a given point in time. But then later down the road, other things which have not been addressed, or for which perhaps they were not ready to confront at that earlier given point, will now be present. So the hope might be that having gone through some work on themselves, as you mentioned a moment ago, they are now more aware that things are now shifting a bit, and that there are challenges that they were not ready to deal with previously, that now they feel maybe a little more empowered to do now that they have suddenly or over the course of time become part of the consciousness that they have.
I totally agree with you. I think you're spot on. And I tell people when they take on my book, I'm always like, hey, it's not a weekend read. It's not a vacation read. It takes time.
Yes.
It takes time, and you're going to hit some things, and you're going to think, oh, I got this. I understand this. I can make these changes and adapt. And you're going to hit others that feel like a brick wall that you're thinking, oh my gosh, this is going to take a little more time, and I don't know if I really want to stick my toe in to this one, or, that's just part of the process, I think, because, we're all human, and we all have emotions, and we all have past scars and trauma of some kind, usually, unless you were just fortunate enough to grow up in that, utopia thing. I don't know, Minnie.
Well, maybe if I sat down with enough time at a computer, maybe I'd write my own story, and it would be take a length. I could write a book of my own probably, and perhaps there might even be people who would relate to what I have to say. Exactly.
Because we just all have these journeys and these challenges, and some, they're pretty intense, and some are kind of more minimal, and every person, deals with those in different ways. Someone that may have had more of a minimal, what I would consider a minimal challenge, may struggle more than I did to deal with it. And someone that had something more challenging than what I did may struggle less to deal with it. It's just, we're all made up differently, and I think sometimes we try to put everybody in a box, and we don't belong in boxes.
No.
And I think that's to me, that's what I saw when I went through my own therapy and stuff, is I always say they were great at saying, hey, this is why you are the way you are, and this is how you got here. But I always felt like no one was giving me the real answers I was looking for.
Yeah.
I wanted to know how to put my life back together.
Yeah.
I wanted to know how to heal the pain of what I'd been through, and no one was offering that, and that's truly one of the main reasons I wrote the book, is to try to offer real, solid answers, exercises, and things that people can do to work through that for them, their individual journey.
It occurs to me that some people may have what might be characterized as a low-grade fever that they learn to live with. And then there are other people who have raging fever, or something between raging and low grade, where it has to be dealt with, it has to be lanced, it has, the proper pain medication or something that brings down the temperature, it has to be done. And as you mentioned a moment ago, maybe someone in that situation may be in a better place, as it were, because they have to confront it rather than simply learn to compensate for it, cope with it, live with it, which nonetheless, in my view, is a miserable place to be if you're dealing with something all of the time that never goes away.
Exactly. I agree with you 100% on that one. I think you're right. I think, I talk about it in the book. There's this.
Well, thank you very much, Manette Morgan, for spending some time with me and listeners here in Connecticut on the WIHS Journal.
Thank you so much. I appreciate it, too, and I feel blessed just to be able to be here and be able to share this information, so thank you.
For further information about Manette Morgan's ministry, call us at 860-346-1049. That's 860-346-1049. Opinions expressed are those of the participants, not necessarily those of the staff or management of this station. I'm Paul Kretschmer on the WIHS Journal. Public Affairs from 104.9 FM WIHS.